This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
Hey, what's happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast. I have a gentleman that I'm extremely excited to have on. I was a guest on his show. He has a ton of energy and a ton of experience. Jim Riley runs a successful consulting business in Kalispell, Montana. Known for supplying value to clients by providing strategic recommendations, Jim is known for smart strategic thinking, insightful operations, successful business growth, and high-pressure transitions. He also hosts the Answer is Yes and the Liberty of Lose podcast and actively consults for several successful companies. Riley oversees two of his own businesses and has an extensive background in marketing, food and beverage, and everything in between. He's well known for his work, which includes time spent with In-N-Out, Kettle One Vodka, Booth Creek Ski Holdings, Azunia Tequila, Baja United Group, and many more. Brother, you have quite the background. I'm excited for this conversation. How you doing, man?
I'm good. It always sounds better coming out of somebody else's mouth. And I keep thinking, did I really do all that stuff?
You know, I've seen the pictures you sent to me. You talk about it. It's remarkable how much you have fit into this short time on earth, man. You have been out there, you've experienced life, and you can help a lot of folks because of that. So tell me, what was your passion to do what you do today? Was it experiencing all these things that you have a passion for business? Talk to me about how you got into what you're doing today.
You know, I think it was David Meltzer that told me one time, hey, we've paid the dummy tax so other people don't have to. In other words, we've made mistakes throughout our career. We've adjusted. We found success on the other side of that. And I realized that that's where I was at. Now, I didn't actually think that people would seek out my advice until after I launched my first podcast show. I talked about my life, all my pitfalls, all the dummy taxes I paid. And the day after it published, I started getting calls from people going, hey, Jim, I'm dealing with the same thing. How did you get out of that? How did you deal with it? Where did you go from there? And I was talking to Meltzer about it. He says, Jim, that's just consulting, man. Maybe you might want to change careers. And at first I was like, I don't know. But then I realized what I really wanted to do was work from home anywhere in the country. And in my mind, I knew I was going to move somewhere special like Montana. So I formulated the plan. But that's really kind of how I got to do what I'm doing now.
Well, you picked a special place. For those of you that don't know, I'm from Montana. My heart has never left Montana. There's a bit of envy that is probably pervading through my voice because I'm looking at your background, brother, and that is what I grew up with. I absolutely love it. And not to get completely derailed about Montana, but you went from California to Montana. It's a pretty big jump. What prompted the move?
You know, I'm going to give you credit for that. And you didn't even know it. And the reason why is the people that live here in Montana, the values that Montana stands for, the people, the small town feel, the approach that they take just in life in general. It's all about families and friends. And, you know, I've met more kids' parents from the school in the last couple months. You know, this is the kind of place when you're driving down the road, people wave at you. Hell, I don't even know why we're waving, but we're waving at one another. It's just what you do on the country road, you know. So, you know, again, I'll give you credit because you grew up here. And those are the elements that I wanted to live in and raise my kids in. And the bonus to me was I've got winter activities. I'm right near Whitefish Ski Resort. I've got hunting, I've got fishing. And in the summer, you know, 12-hour daylight, that you can't beat that, you know, grassy fields, and I can ride my horse around. So it's a special place on earth. It's God's gift to the United States, and I'm here.
Well, you're blessed, man. Good call. Now, everybody, you at some point check it out. Just don't move there because you know, that's what they would say back home. But talk to me, brother, because I mean, your background, you were also racing cars. I mean, your background is so wild and remarkable. And I don't know how to get it best to the audience, but maybe you kind of have that 3 to 5 minute snippet of these are some of the things I didn't experience that have led me to this really cool place. Because I wouldn't call it dummy text because there's nothing dumb coming from you, brother, but I love the idea. I know what you're saying there. So can you kind of break down all that you've done? Because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'll give you a good snippet. We can dive in on some of those things. I grew up at the beach, Newport Beach, spent a lot of time working for my grandfather in a restaurant, living on the beach, surfing and spending time in the ocean was a natural thing that we all did, and a lot of ocean fishing. Part of surfing in California, you have that exploratory side of you where we would go down to Baja and surf Baja because there was no crowds and, street tacos and Corona beers on the side of the road. And that was my lifestyle up and into my young adult years. At the time, I was working for In-N-Out Burger, great family company. My brother was the CEO, made a lot of money there, had a lot of fun. And, it allowed me to live this lifestyle that I enjoyed, which was surfing. And being in Southern California, it's kind of was the extreme sport capital. So anytime a new extreme sport came along, I was going to jump on that bandwagon. I've always been an athlete. I wrestled in high school, played football and all those other things. So when snowboarding came along, I'm snowboarding, surfing, I continued to do, dirt biking, I did that. And as I transitioned through careers, I kind of always highlighted, like, what am I doing as a hobby? And does that fit with where I'm working? So when I left In-N-Out Burger, I wound up living in Lake Tahoe for 4 years. I worked at a ski resort, snowboarding every day. And I've always had this say yes attitude to opportunities, because I just feel like, what's it going to hurt to try? And if it sounds like fun, let's say yes. If I didn't know how to do it, then I'm going to figure out how to do it. When I landed in Lake Tahoe, I really wanted to snowboard and slow my life down a little bit. And I was willing to take any job. Fortunately, I had a little bankroll to go up there with. I took a job at the Harvey's Casino buffet, selling lobster specials on Fridays, but I was still out boarding and having a good time. Well, I said yes to a few opportunities along the way, and ultimately I became the food and beverage director of a ski resort, which is kind of the golden egg of jobs in a ski town, to have access to the food and the drinks and the skiing and all that. So that allowed me to have my freestyle life, snowboarding, all these other things, but I had a great job. There was a point where I had to leave there. My ex-wife now said, we're leaving tomorrow. I'm done with this mountain. It's kind of like an island when you live up on top of a mountain. It's not a lot besides outdoor activities. And moved back to Newport Beach, landed a job with Kettle One Vodka as the vice president of marketing. It was an emerging brand at the time, so I helped launch that brand across the country and into some outer countries like Canada and some Europe. And what that did is it really afforded me to do a lot of wild things. When you look at my background, you're like, wow, you knew this guy, you did this, you were with the PGA Tour, all these crazy things and people I interacted with. A lot of that came from my days at Kettle One. And that was from me just respecting who I worked around, what they did, doing what I would say I was going to do, following through on all those things, built a great reputation in business for me. And I was allowed to grow in that experience. Ultimately, when they sold to a company by the name of Diageo, I did not want to go work with them after the sale and kind of launching the brand with them. And I started my own tequila company down in Mexico. Now, interestingly enough, around the same time, I was approached to be on an off-road racing team. And if you don't know off-road, you might have heard of a famous race called the Baja 1000. It's an off-road race that goes from Ensenada all the way to Cabo. It's anywhere between 1,000 miles to 1,200 miles, and basically what I call a NASCAR for the dirt. So that was my introduction into off-road racing. And I wound up ultimately racing for Ford Motor Company for 13 years. Last year was 2019 that I was racing for them. Had the pleasure of winning the Baja 1000 3 different times in different classes, and a lot of other races around the country in Nevada, Arizona, California, etc. And I was all in on that sport. In the meantime, I had launched my tequila company named Azuña Tequila, operating out of Guadalajara and importing to the US and having a lot of fun there. And, just transitioned through life that way. I got remarried, had a couple kids, and ultimately knew that I wanted to raise my kids somewhere special. And that's how I wound up in Montana. Now, one last caveat to kind of full circle on the things that you alluded to. Part of my off-road racing, because of the amount of time in the car, anywhere from 9 to 20 hours or more, depending on how bad the day was, I needed to be in good physical shape. So to do that, I used to have these extracurricular activities on top of the racing that forced me to work out, like climbing mountains like Mount Whitney or Mount Rainier in Washington, because I knew that I had to put in the time to be able to do that, which in turn got me in good shape to be in the race car. And that led to other crazy things like racing the Spartan series, which is an obstacle course series. At one point when I turned 50, I was ranked third in the world for men over 50, coming off of an Iceland 24-hour race back in 2019. So I know that's a big dump of stuff, a lot of exciting parts about my life. And it really just comes from saying yes to opportunities, being willing to try and giving it 100% effort once I said yes to it.
Well, clearly you said yes. And first off, 50, okay, no wonder you experience so much. You don't look it. So that physical conditioning you've been doing is working. Great job.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, man, you did say yes. In fact, you have a new book coming out, Freedom to Say Yes. I have to imagine this is you maybe talking about recognizing opportunities, having the faith, confidence. Tell me more, man, because again, to be this amazing racer, the tequila, the in and out. I mean, most people don't experience that much in a lifetime. You've done it again in a pretty small window. Talk to me about freedom to say yes and recognizing opportunities.
Yeah, so writing the book is something I've wanted to do for 10 years. And as a consultant, I talk to people about writing down their goals and their values and working towards their goals. And we're not perfect. As you know, we have our own struggles. I've been wanting to write this book for 10 years, or write a book for 10 years, tell some of my stories. And finally, I'm going to check that box, right? I finally pushed it through the other side. But the book has basically 16 lessons that's followed with 16 stories of interesting things that's happened in my life. I wanted to put some value out there, but have some fun around these stories. And I can give you a really interesting story about never giving up, because we talked a little bit about racing. I'll tie it into a race story, which is actually in the book. Never giving up. I've had that reputation, especially in racing. I'm going to race until the clock strikes, the race is over. And in off-road racing, unlike NASCAR, where there's a tight window, in off-road racing, usually there's an extra 12 to 24 hours because you break down, they realize things happen, you get towed out, you fix the whole thing. And they're just longer. A lot of teams, when they break, they'll quit. All right, we're done. The rich guys will have their jets fly in or get picked up in the helicopter in the middle of the desert and send their guys to go retrieve the vehicle. I'm the guy, I'm going to race to the finish every time to the last minute of the clock. So one particular race, this was a vintage race at a 1957 Chevy that was built for off-road racing. It was famous at the time. It was famous back in the 70s when it raced originally, won a lot of championships. So I rebuilt that, brought it back to the Nora Vintage 1000. And the day before the race, the publicity director for the series asked me, hey, I've got somebody from Hot Rod Magazine here. Can I integrate her into your team? She's the editor-in-chief of Hot Rod Magazine, which we all grew up on if you're in your 40s or 50s. And she wants to write a story about the race. I said, hell yeah, bring her on. So we're with her. She integrates with the team. It's a 5-day race. You race all day, fix the car at night, you race again the next day, heading down the Peninsula of Baja. Day 3, I decide, hey, you know what? Pretty cool girl. I'm going to put her in my car for the first 100 miles or to the first pit stop so she can experience what this is like live, right? I throw her in the car. Things are going great. We gave her a quick download. We got tangled up with the Jeep Wrangler, tore off some fenders and stuff. It's all good. Finally, we get to a point where I see that the oil pressure's rising, temperature of the oil is rising. I know we got a problem. I call it in over the radio to my team manager. Says, hey, pull over, check it out. You don't want to lose oil. So we get out of the car. I'm not really a mechanic, by the way. I'm a driver. I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm not that mechanical guy. She, however, Alana, is a mechanic. And she says, hey, look, you got a lot of oil coming out of your front end, the front head gasket. I'm like, okay, well, that's a problem. We add some more oil, fire up the car back again, spewing oil like crazy. At this time, this guy drives by in a Subaru. Now, what you got to know about Baja, people come out of nowhere. Husband and wife in a Subaru in the middle of nowhere from Canada, touring around, taking photos. And he says, hey, you guys need help? Nope, we don't need help. He goes, well, if you need help, let me know. I'm here. I'll tow you out. There's no way in hell I'm going to let a Subaru tow me out of the desert. Big macho guy, right? No way. So he pulls off to the side, sits there drinking his cold beer, taking pictures of us. Eventually, Alana says, this motor's blown, man. We got to call it. So it's like, all right, put my tail between my legs, walk over to Mr. Subaru and say, hey, can you drag us out to the main highway, which is 15 miles or so. 2 hours later, we get out there. And Alana says, we're done, aren't we? I said, nope, we're going to figure it out. Now, the great news about a 5-day race is you can DNF one day and go back in the race the following day. What I had to do to kind of wrap this up is my team members had already called ahead to the town of Laredo, found a motor that we could buy. We got there. Motor turned out to be a no-show, but this is Mexico. The security guard overheard us and said, hey, my dad will sell you his 1987 Chevy pickup that has a motor in it. So we said yes. We bought that for $1,200. We rented a garage for $50 and we swapped motors and we went racing again the next day. We wound up getting a podium finish on day 5. The point of that whole fun story, by the way, Alana was blown away. She wrote 7 pages about her adventure with us in Hot Rod Magazine, which is like a value of 120 grand. But the point of that story is never give up, right? And sometimes by not giving up, it's all the things that happen in between the start and the finish line. That's real life. That's life is all about those moments and the memories and the people and the endurance to get through it all. And those are the types of things and the values you get out of never giving up. So one chapter of the story.
I can't wait to read it. It's just, again, I think of that story and I think of how you're helping all these businesses, because it's never going to be an easy path, right? You're going to face adversities. And if you think, oh, I have this amazing dream and it's going to be sunshine and rainbows and unicorns, that's just not practical. And you're applying that, I have to imagine, to your clients. And this book is going to help so many people. Give me maybe 1 or 2 more of the lessons that people can really look forward to, because I mean, look, hook, line, and sinker, I'm in. I'm going to read this book, but I want my listeners to know a little bit more what Jim has going on.
Yeah. So when I had my tequila company, we were fortunate enough to land a big account, which is Landry's. They're out of Texas. It's owned by Tillman Furtada. He's the largest private restaurant group holder in the world, probably, right? For sure in the United States. Anyways, I had the opportunity to meet him with my partner, Bill Walton, a couple times. Great guy. They loved our product. And they put us in a lot of their restaurants, probably over half their restaurants. At the time, they had 565 restaurants. So we were over 275 restaurants distributed with our product. And a lot of people came up to me like, how did you land that account? Like, how did you do it? And, I really didn't know the answer to that question, because we presented our product, we delivered our product, we gave them the pricing we said, and all of those things that I would think is normal. So finally I asked the buyer, who worked directly for Tillman. His name is James. I said, James, what is it about it that you picked our product over others? Because there's other tequilas out there. He says, Jim, you did what you said you were going to do 100% of the time. I said, really? Because it's as simple as that. He goes, I see all these buyers, I give them my time and they don't follow through. Because that's plain and simple, basic business 101. And it's funny because I just wrote or edited this last part of the story last night along those lines. I've got a business acquaintance. He's a major influencer in the market. We've tossed stories back and forth. He's been on my podcast. We banter on social media. So we're aware of one another. It's not like I'm a foreigner, right? And I texted him, I said, hey, it would mean a lot to me if you could give me a little forward advance note for my book, right? 2 sentences, not a big deal, right? His response was, absolutely, we'll do that, right? Cool, thank you. I'll let you know when the deadline is. So a couple of weeks go by, and I said, hey, I got a deadline in 3 weeks. If you still don't mind, and he writes me back and says, what is exactly that you want me to do? It was almost like curt, I said, all right, well, here's what I'm looking for. And I basically just about wrote it out for him. He gives me one of those little heart emojis, like, okay, got it. It wasn't a no. It's certainly not a no. It was a heart emoji. I'm still waiting to this day. It's been over a month. My deadline's gone. The book's coming out. And it's like, look, your job is to influence people and talk about what a badass you are and how to get shit done. This is a small request from a colleague that you said, absolutely, right? Not maybe, not no, absolutely. So it just goes back to walk the talk, walk the talk, do the action. If you say you're going to do it, follow through, because it will separate you from even the leaders in the pack if you follow through.
Man, and I wish I could say that that's not common. Unfortunately, guys, I don't know which influencer he's talking about. I could guess. I'm not going to on the show, but it's the frustrating part, right? Where you see these guys, they have this big platform, they're awesome on stage, but then they don't show up that way in real life. So that sucks to hear, man. But you do exactly what you say you're going to do. The Bill Walton he's talking about, by the way, is arguably the greatest college basketball player to ever play. So, yeah. I mean, my question would be, you talked about goals earlier. I want to talk about goals and recognizing these opportunities, because obviously you've done a great job of doing both. You set out for a goal, like you're going to go live in Montana, you're going to go live in Tahoe, and then these amazing things happen. That's not by happenstance. There is something that you are creating or your eyes are open to. Talk to me about setting a goal and then also recognizing opportunities along the way.
So in 1985, I graduated the following year. I'm 54 in a couple days. I listened to a speech by Mark Victor Hansen, and he said, what you believe is what you'll achieve. Now, Mark is the co-author for Chicken Soup for the Soul. And in that era, there's all kinds of cliche sayings, is your glass half empty or glass half full? So I really took those things to heart. Like, hey, my glass is half full, and what I believe is what I'll achieve. And I've approached life that way ever since. It's no mystery that there's opportunities out there, but it's how we approach them. It's how we look at them. And it's our willingness to convert that into something. And then throwing some patience and some persistence on top of that, right? I haven't done anything that the next guy couldn't do, next person can do, because there's opportunities everywhere. Matter of fact, because my lens is so big now, I get frustrated because I could run that. I could convert that to money. I could do that. And I don't say that in an arrogant way, but because my lens has that eye for the opportunities now I get to pick and choose what I want to do. And I think maybe that's a little bit about what you're getting at, because I have done a lot, but it's because I've picked and choose what I wanted to do based on my backgrounds, based on my values, based on what's important to me. And I've excelled at it because it struck home in all those arenas, right? So if my values are God, family, health, giving back, having time to do those things, and then business last, and I might make my decisions based on my own personal values, I'm going to be happier doing it. My goals are going to align with my values, and I'm going to give it everything I have. And by the way, I'll have the support of my family because I put them first, right? So I'm just getting ready to launch a couple online memberships, syndicates. One is for young entrepreneurs. It's the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate, and the other one is the 1776 Syndicate. They're both advisory type memberships where people can go out and do things, whether that's getting into politics, or if you're a young adult, maybe early 30s, looking to transition your career or looking for kind of that finishing school. We're giving back. And giving back, as I just stated, is one of my values. I want to help people, right? So it's me starting another 2 businesses in a lot of people's eyes, like, wow, now you're going to do 2 more things. Well, they're completely aligned with who I am and what I like doing, right? Success will be an effect of that because it resonates, and I'm manifesting the success, right? When I talk to people about it, like, wow, that is so needed. Of course it is. and you tell everybody you know about it, right? So I just want to encourage your listeners, like, look at opportunities, manifest your opportunity and what you want out of it, and align those things with your goals and, more importantly, your values.
How did the idea of manifestation really click home? Have you always been that way as a kid surfing in SoCal? You just were like, oh, I want a taco, and boom, there it is. Or is it something that you've kind of evolved and learned and understood? Because I definitely understand the idea and the concept. And I think a lot of listeners do, but you'll hear people be like, that's woo woo. It's this, which, by the way, I don't say that on my show because I don't believe in woo woo. I believe, just like you said, whatever you believe you can achieve. So was it this Mark that kind of made that come to light, or is that something that you've always realized, like, man, when I want something bad enough, if I visualize it, if I believe it, it shows up in my life?
Yeah, there's a few takeaways from this discussion. So the quick answer is no. Mark did not give me that black and white back in 1985. Like, hey, if you manifest it, these things are going to come to you. What Mark did give me is the belief in myself to go after something. And what I felt I was doing is just putting in good, hard labor, having some grit to get through the tough times. That's not to say I didn't give up or walk away or have failures, right? But I identified it as a time before it became a major failure in my life. Really, the manifestation that you're referring to, it didn't occur to me until probably 5 years ago, to be honest with you. I've always said yes, and I've always had some great opportunities. I've always been positive, and I believe that that's part of manifestation, that you're positive about it. You see the opportunity, you're willing to work hard, put in the grit, and all these other things. But what I didn't realize is how important it is to really look at manifesting something, right? And what that takes, and this is some of the things I learned under David Meltzer, is having faith over fear in the process. Faith over fear, right? Because when you're fearful, you're already setting yourself up for failure. So having faith over fear and utilizing that tactic in your head to get rid of your negative speak to yourself, right? And negative speak resonates with me a lot, because as a runner, and I was running 70 miles a week for Spartan training. That's a lot of time with myself, right? With my, I don't care if you're listening to Loud Rock and Roll or podcast, you're still talking to yourself. And as I'm thinking about what I learned in the last 5 years about self-talk and self-actualization of what you see, I realized, hey, if I can talk positive to myself, like these, I don't want to call them gurus, but these advisors are saying, now I'm manifesting not only in my own head, but outwardly what I want and what I want to become and who I want to be and what I want to achieve. You've got everything working for you. If you sit around all day saying, hey, I'm fat, I'm never going to get skinny, I'm never going to lose weight, guess what? You're going to stay exactly how you are, right? But if you say, hey, I want that, I'm going to go after that, and in your head, you see yourself getting that, it'll get there. I give you, if it's okay, I want to give you one quick story about how I actually utilized that and how it came out. So again, in my Spartan running and my training, I run my yard, the outer perimeter of my yard, which is a half mile around my yard. And one of the fence lines is adjacent to 20 empty acres. And I now raise cattle on some of those acres. But before I raised the cattle there, I always looked at those acres like, I want to buy that. I want to buy that. I want to buy that. So I'm running the fence line, envisioning winning the Spartan race. But then I get to that fence line, like, there's my property. Oh, I see my cows over there. Oh, I see me driving down the pasture with my side-by-side, right? Well, the guy didn't want to sell to me. And then when he finally wanted to sell, he was so overpriced. I wasn't willing to pay that, nor could I afford it. And then guess what? It sold to somebody else. And all of a sudden, like, bam, there goes my dreams. But you know what? I still ran that fence line going, what? One day I will own that. One day I'll be there. Well, the new owner, I wound up reaching out to him. He had no idea what he was going to do with the property. But because I've been thinking about it and wanting to do something there, knowing something would happen, I said, look, can I lease at least 10 of these acres to put cattle on? He says, yeah, I don't see why not. I'm not doing anything. So now for the last 8 months, I've had cattle down in those 10 acres, and I have control over half the property that I wanted. I've manifested at least the first big step to that property, right? And, it's a simple example, and it's a means to an end. The point is if you think about something, you really want it to happen, it's going to happen, right? You're going to make it happen. You're going to work towards that. And so as it relates to people's goals, if you manifest what you want enough, you'll get it. This takes time, persistence, pursuit. You'll get it.
Isn't it so true? I mean, obviously you take action. That's one thing that people fail to realize. Like, you have to take the action, but putting the energy towards whatever, like you said, the Spartan race, you're putting energy towards that. Therefore, something is going to come from it. I love this subject, but one of the things that you've mentioned several times, you've mentioned a couple names that have been really impactful to you. You said David Meltzer a couple times. You obviously worked with Frittata. You worked with Walton. I mean, you've been around some, what I would deem pretty darn successful people. What have you, obviously you've gleaned ideas, but I don't think people always do that. They're around them, but they're kind of in awe instead of just soaking in some of the knowledge. What are some of the maybe tips you can give people? Because clearly you are an expert at doing that, being around great people and allowing them to influence you in a positive manner.
Yeah, I'll give you another great story from the book. So the time I was working for Kettle One Vodka, we were the official sponsor of the PGA Tour. I was up in Rhode Island. One of the cool things that we did was provide an ice bar. So they pour the martinis through it, and people, have these cool martinis through ice. And Greg Norman walks up, the shark. I'm standing there in my suit. I don't know Greg. I mean, I know who he is. We all do, right? And he's standing there and he looks over and he goes, "Hey, is this your company?" I said, "Yeah, I work for Kettle One. This is our ice bar." He goes, "Man, that thing's pretty awesome." I said, "Yeah, thank you." He goes, "How come I don't have one of these at my tournament down in Naples, Florida?" I said, "You know what? I can actually answer that pretty easily because I'm in charge of all of our sponsorships." I said, "Greg, your tournament director, part of the deal was we did the ice bar and all these promotions, and somebody from the tournament could win an outing with Kettle One that happens every year in December." I said, "Because your event is in January, your tournament director didn't want us to give him a gift that the winner would have to wait a full year almost to receive." He goes, "Well, that sounds crazy." He says, we're busy tonight." He says, "We should talk about this. How about you meet me on the golf course tomorrow? You can walk a few holes with me." And he goes, "By the way, I heard you going to Chicago tomorrow for that tournament. Why don't you catch a ride with me down there and we can talk business?" Sounds good to me, right? I knew Greg had just picked up a brand new G550 Gulfstream, right? So I said, yes, of course. Next day I showed up on the golf course, walked a few holes, we had lunch. We left there in 2 vans full of players, got to the airport. This is the coolest thing. So I'm walking with Greg and his assistant. 12 of the golfers walk left. I thought we were all going to Greg's plane because it's massive, right? It holds 19 people. And 3 of us walked to Greg's plane. I'm like, "Where are they going?" He's like, "Oh yeah, they got to go fly that little plane over there." This was Greg's second flight on this brand new G550. It's a $35 million plane at the time. And the 3 of us got on there. They served us lunch, cold MJDs. And Greg and I struck a deal to do the event the following year down in Naples. Because he said, "Look, let's talk through this." He goes, "I really want what you're doing. There's no reason why we can't come to an agreement here." And we worked it out. We landed in Chicago and everything was great. As far as I know, they're still doing Greg's tournament. The point of telling you that story based on your question is, don't be afraid to deal with the people at the top. They're just like us, okay? It doesn't matter what their accomplishments are. And yeah, there's going to be some that are rude or are arrogant and they won't talk to you. But for the most part, they're just like us. They want to help. They want to achieve. They want to be successful. They want to make things happen. So don't be afraid to reach out to the top. And that's what I've learned with working with people like Meltzer, Bill Walton, Greg, and so many other top level guys that they're willing to work with you. If you got your shit together, you've got a plan, you know your business, you know what you want, and you know what you can deliver. So you've got that value for value, right? So don't be afraid to knock on those doors.
I love that. And one of the other themes that I hear every time you talk is you have this desire to help, and every company you build is all about helping. That's the theme that I hear. And one of the topics that you is helping our youth. What is your thoughts around really this next generation, our future? How do we best serve and help our youth? Because I know you're passionate about helping people. What can we be doing to do our best to do that?
Yeah, I think that the best thing that we can do for our youth, young adults, or even, adults in their early 30s, is give them the tools that they need to make good choices in life based on their values. And I know I talk a lot about values, but it's so important to understand who we are and what's important to us, and then go pursue a career or a life that aligns with that, right? So often, and I'll just use this as a gross example that we're all aware of. So often you've got a high schooler getting ready to go into college because their parents want them to go into college, that's what we do. You're going to go be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, or whatever. And that kid, that's the last thing they want to do. Maybe they're really talented in the garage as a mechanic, and really what they want to do is go to trade school and be a mechanic. Or maybe they're the kid that always had the lemonade stand making money and really just wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? I want to equip the young adults, the youth, with the tools to make sound decisions on what direction to take in their life, whether that's college, trade school, become an entrepreneur, pursue sports or military, right? Not be defined by what people want you to do, but what you want to do, and give the tools to go out and chase that, right? That's how I think we can help the next generation, right? Get them off the phones too. It's a struggle. I'm in the struggle every day, but get them off the phones, get them active. Keep them out of getting in a depressed state. Dads, be involved with your kids, take them out to do things, be involved with your young adults, bring the family unit back. The list goes on, but that's the top of my list.
It's so good, brother. It's so good. I have a very simple question, and that is, you have mentioned values several times. Clearly, you have clarity around what your values are. Do you have a specific set of family values or personal values that you've written down, or is it just something that you have in your subconscious, and maybe it's front of mind, conscious mind, that you're just like, this is what I stand for? And I say that not as, it's not like a tricky question, but rather I want the audience to say, hey, it's okay to know exactly who I am, what I stand for, and put that out to the world.
Yeah. So I operate my days off of a yellow pad of paper, the legal yellow pad of paper. On top of that pad, I write my values down. Okay. And every day when I put it, rip off the top page, and I write those values down again. And right now they're unchanging. They're who I am. Again, God, family, health, giving back, time. The last thing is business. The last thing is making money. The thing that takes me away from my family and God and the things that are important to me. But I integrate that in with my family, and we're all aligned. These values come from things that are important to us as a family, right? We spend time at church on Wednesday nights and on Sundays. My kids spend a lot of time and energy giving back. Before we go to bed every night, we each say 3 things that we're grateful for, right? And that could be as simple as the roof over our heads, or the nice dinner, or mom and dad, or that, the house, or the animals, the chickens, whatever it is. But teaching a sense of gratitude to my kids. And yes, it's okay for us to pronounce what our values are, what we stand for. Matter of fact, I think it's more important now than ever to be transparent with who we are, especially in business, right? Because if we're giving out a false sense of who we are, and I know a lot of people are so good at doing that on Instagram, they've got that picture with the Lambo or the jet or whatever it is, like, hey, look at me. And that's not who they are. When somebody discovers who they really are, they're going to be turned off. You might turn off your customers. I realized since I really started talking about my faith about 5 or 6 years ago, and let me just say this, I've been a Christian since I was 6 years old, right? So whatever you believe in or whatever your lifestyles are, don't be afraid to talk about that. And I was really, I kind of kept it in my back pocket. I always did the right thing, but I really didn't talk about God being a foundational element in my life to about 6 years ago. That means for 47 years, I've kind of had God in my back pocket, right? Well, ever since I pulled him out of my pocket and I made that the forefront of my decisions and who I am and my posts on social media and everything else, my podcast, I've garnered more. I've had the best 3 business years of my life consulting, best financial years. And by the way, I've had more time with my family than I could have ever imagined, dreamed up, or wrote down as a goal. So be who you are, be authentic, figure out what your values are, and work with them. Be that person.
I mean, there's a golden nugget. Literally, guys, every day as I'm writing on my yellow pad, as he's talking, by the way, but I love that you literally write your values down every single day. You can't forget at that point. Brother, I want to give you a chance. If I should have known something to ask, just because your stories are fascinating, I could ask about those all day, but anything you want to make sure that we share with the audience before we kind of wrap up, that you're like, man, I got to say this before we get done.
Well, the most important message that I give people is this discussion around values and identifying those. Also, those values develop into your goals as an individual. And if we can establish those 2 things, I think that, and this is kind of beating the dead horse here, but if you can identify those 2 things, you really can have success in life, whether that's in business or family or in anything else that you set out to do. But just remember, it takes time and patience to see these things work. Nothing happens overnight, I promise you. But if you're willing to put in the time and work towards that, you will be happier than you've ever been and more successful. And this isn't some, guru speak, or I don't remember what some type of special magic. This is just life. And it's almost ridiculous that more people don't understand how great life can be. God wants us to have abundance, right? The society as a whole, abundance is there, so live a life of more than enough, and you always have more than enough, right? So I'll leave it on that, because I could keep going on all these little sidebars, but outside of that, I hope that the book is out. I hope people pick it up, Freedom to Say Yes. You can get it on Amazon. My website, livelifedriven.com, has all of my podcasts, including our interview. And thank you again, by the way, about Let's Go Win. It's doing really well on my numbers and analytics. So you can hear a lot of great guests, including David Meltzer on there. So I'm so appreciative of the time and being able to catch up with you again.
Oh, man, truly, it's my pleasure. Again, I get the pleasure of not only hearing your stories, I'm looking at my home state. I'm absolutely filled right now with nothing but love and just abundance right now. I'm like so excited to have you on. Guys, go check him out. Please go to his website, go get the book, Freedom to Say Yes. Jim, you're an awesome dude, man. I love having you on, and I just appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You guys have a great, successful 2022.
It is going to be an awesome 2022. You guys, I mean, literally, those stories entertain. I'm fortunate that I get to get off and ask him more questions, but I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Remember, your mindset matters so much, and we will talk to you again next week. Have a great one. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.